Hi, so my name's Dwight Williams. I'm from Boston. I'm calling from MCI Norfolk. Been in for 19 years, and my sentence is life without the possibility of parole. I just co-founded a nonprofit organization called BRODI, Black Rights Organization Dismantling Inequities.
Bounce back, ain't got a moment. When they see you down, just know they love it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bounce Back Podcast. I got a special guest with me today calling in. So why don't you tell the people your name, where you're from, and where you're at right now, where you're calling in from?
Hi, so my name's Dwight Williams. I'm from Boston. I'm calling from MCI Norfolk.
Okay, Dwight, so why don't you just tell the people how long you've been in for and in your sentence, just for a frame of reference.
So I've been in for 19 years, and my sentence is life without the possibility of parole.
And how old are you?
I just turned 40, August 3rd.
Oh, you got the same birthday as my little brother and Tom Brady, I believe, too.
So, yeah, Brady definitely got that.
Yeah, happy belated birthday, man.
I appreciate you.
So you've been in for a long time. You know, a lot of negative things go on in prison and a lot of negative thinking, but you've been up to some positive things since you've been in, at least recently. So why don't you get into that? What are some positive things that you have done during your time?
I came in 2005. Like I said, I've been down for a while. I came upstate 07. You know, I wasn't being so positive then, but in regards to the positive things I've done, I got my GED while in, a bunch of other certificates from program completion. Right now, I just co-founded a nonprofit organization called BRODI, Black Rights Organization Dismantling Inequities. Our mission is to educate and enlighten the nation about structural inequities within the criminal legal system and why it must be transformed. So that's what I'm currently doing today, and just working on my evolution continuously. You know, I definitely come a long way. So that's where I'm at today.
So just talk about why you wanted to get into that. Why'd you want to start that program?
Well, what pushed me to do it, to get into abolitionist work and activism work, was just a lot of the inequities I dealt with. It really stemmed from issues with CPCS, or the Committee for Public Counsel Services, and a lot of the attorneys that I dealt with throughout my incarceration, trying to fight the wrongful conviction, and just the way they were dealing with me, and just hearing complaints from other brothers as well, and knowing that I had to do something about it. So I just started focusing on the inequities within CPCS, and then, you know, I was dealing with the Harriet Tubman Project. Then I moved on from that, and I knew it was best that I created my own organization and just fight for the people.
And those lawyers you're talking about, that's pretty much what? Those are the court-appointed lawyers? Is that what that is?
Yeah, so if you're charged with a felony and you don't have money to hire an attorney yourself, they'll deem you indigent, meaning that you can't afford an attorney, and the court will appoint you counsel, but CPCS assigns counsel.
All right, so what was some personal things that you faced with your lawyer that made you really want to do this?
Just the dehumanization, the institutional violence, the way they just devalued you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you don't know any better, they capitalize off your ignorance. I dealt with a lot of different things, so it's a lot to break down, but just realizing that they working in concert with the prosecution to get convictions, and then on the back end, working with the prosecution to uphold convictions. And that's not even just my experience, but even just hearing other brothers' narratives as well, I could just see clearly that's what they're doing. Okay,
so you mentioned the word dehumanization, right? And one of my things when I started this podcast was to highlight and humanize, and that humanize word was a big part of it for me. So we're gonna do that by, you know, telling your story. We're gonna bring it back a little bit. We're gonna rewind. So you say you grew up in Boston. What part of Boston did you grow up in? Boston's, you know, got its different sections. Dorchester, Roxbury.
Yeah, I lived in different areas in Boston. So I lived in Mattapan more than once. I lived in Dorchester. I lived in Roxbury briefly. I lived in the South End. I spent time out in Medford. I lived several different places. Natick in a residential program. I was in Brockton, in foster care days. So I've been around Massachusetts.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned you had just mentioned foster care. So why don't we just talk a little bit about what was your household like growing up? Where did you
I
did
had
you have both parents, siblings?
Yeah, so I grew up with both of my parents. I have one brother and three sisters. I'm the second oldest, so I'm the oldest boy. And we had a dysfunctional family. It was a lot of chaos and confusion within the household, just dealing with, you know, addiction issues with a lot of our parents and like older guardians, well, older relatives, should I say.
Mm-hmm.
And that was definitely difficult. And that was part of the reason we were in and out of foster care, and me being like a residential program at a certain point in my life. So it was definitely difficult.
At what age does that become part of your story, the foster care?
Early on, I was definitely a little boy, and it was more than once. So maybe 3 times probably I was in the system.
Did they keep you and your siblings together?
So at one point, me and my younger brother, which is also upstate with me right now, he was there with me. So even though I have 5 years on him, I was a little boy back then, and you know, me and him were all we knew. So I had to kind of take on a protector role early on, and like my foster brothers, they kind of used to pick on my brother a lot, so I used to have to fight them and you know, basically defend him and defend myself. So, and my sisters, you know, they were moved around to different places, so we weren't together.
So, I mean, not having that stable home environment, how big of a role do you think that played in like you and your brother getting caught up in the system?
It definitely played a major role for me. Just the household issues, I feel like, is what kind of like pushed me out to the streets. Just, you know, getting away from, you know, the stresses from in home, and just looking for a getaway, and just started like smoking weed at a young age, maybe 12 years old. Started drinking probably 13, 14 a little bit. I hung with a lot of individuals that were older than me. Just, you know, not positive influences and role models. And I looked up to, you know, the wrong individuals. I think it was more so just getting that love, or what I thought was love at the time, and a little bit of affection and, you know, embrace. So just being around that, because I felt like I wasn't really getting that in the home, just because of my parents dealing with their own issues, you know.
With all that going on at home, how were you as a student? How did you do in school?
All right, so I know for a fact that definitely had an impact on me, because I struggled throughout school. So a lot of people don't even know about me that, you know, I had a learning disability growing up, and I was in special education. So I had to have like an IEP plan, and I was in like a smaller classroom with individuals with issues similar to mine. And the issues at home definitely affected, you know, my academic. Just wasn't able to focus, you know what I mean? And it hindered me a lot. And then when I ended up going to the residential program, like maybe when I was like 14 years old, I started doing a little better in school, because I think it was because I was removed from that environment, and I was able to focus more on myself and my work, you know what I mean? So I started getting like honor roll A's and B's, and I was doing better.
Now, what about behavioral issues? Did you have any behavioral issues, or was it just?
I definitely had behavioral issues. I mean, just thinking about just smoking and drinking as a child, like, you know, and just dealing with stresses and trauma. I definitely had behavioral issues, and you know, being told you're bad all the time by a bunch of different people, and you're no good, this and that. You start really believing that, so you start behaving badly.
So talk about the smoking and drinking, right? When does that become part of your story? You said pretty early, and why?
I say the first time I smoked, maybe I was about 10, 11. My older cousin, you know, let me hit a blunt, and I got sick. And then I started smoking on my own at probably about 12 years old, and it became regularly at 13, I would say.
And what about drinking?
Drinking, I'll say 13, 14. So I'll say more so 14.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I started drinking, but so I went to the residential program a little after that, around that time, where I was drinking. I mean, smoking heavily and drinking, you know, occasionally. And when I came home from that program when I was about 16, because I was there for a little bit, that's when I started drinking like more regularly.
And why do you think that was? Just trying to numb some things, or?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely numb some things. I feel like it was the norm in my peer group. You know, drinking and smoking, just hanging out, just into nonsense. Definitely dealing with trauma. You know, I learned to have a lot of trauma, so I think that was part of it.
Okay, so did you deal with the juvenile system at all, the court system?
Nah, well, they had to put a chins on me when I was younger because I was just missing a lot of school. I was barely ever going to school. If I did go, I would go and leave.
Okay, so explain to the people what a chins is. What exactly does that entail?
A chin stands for Child in Need of Services, and the school can place it on you, or your parents can place it on you. So the school placed it on me because of my absences. So I had a lot of absences, you know, like a year or two in a row, and they put a chin on me because of that.
Okay. Do you end up? So, you said you got your GED since you've been in. So what happened? Why did you stop school?
I say when I went home from the program, they put me in an alternative school called the Curtis Tufts in Medford. It's just, I don't know. It was a major. I feel like it was more of a distraction than anything, because when I was going to school, most of the kids was just getting high, and early around that time, I probably started selling pills and stuff like that, and other narcotics. And I feel like, in my mind, just being in the mental state I was then, I felt like I was missing money being in school, and I wasn't learning anyway, and it was like no point even going to school, so I just stopped going.
And what were you doing when you weren't going to school? Did you stay home?
Just participating in selling drugs and smoking and, you know, drinking, chilling with females, you know, things like that.
So you were already doing that when pretty much you dropped out. So what age did you start doing that? Did you start hustling and everything and getting involved in the streets? And why do you think that was?
I probably would say it depends on what you mean by the streets, or what most people would say. I'll say probably around that time when I came home from that program, about 16 years old. But I think even before then, before I went to the program, I was in the streets in my mind. I was hanging out late at night, drinking, smoking, hanging with individuals that were hustling. I think I was even probably selling a little bit of weed at that time. Nothing major, but, you know, something light just to get pairs of sneakers and fitted hats and silly stuff like that.
What was it about that life that attracted you?
That was the cool thing, I would say, back then. That's what my mind was. That was cool. You know, I was heavily influenced by like music, like rap, gangster rap, and just that destroyed culture where those things were cool. You know, getting high, getting drunk, you know, having sex with women and being a gangster and all that stuff was kind of like pushed. And it was in my surroundings. That was my environment.
I mean, do you have a theory on why that type of stuff is pushed more than, let's say, conscious rap?
I feel like it's a design almost. I feel like just learning a little more about the system, the money aspect. And if you look at how they target our communities, right, and the music. So with a young person, I just think back to me not being able to differentiate the music from reality. So understanding that it's really only entertainment. But when you're young, I don't think you're able to see it that way, especially if some of the things that are being, the lyrical content in the music you're seeing in your community, you know, with the violence, you know, the drugs, and, you know, just the way individuals behave. So looking at the criminal legal system, if you look at how they deal with black and brown communities, with the over-policing, all the different provisions and statutes where they target our communities, and basically that's what fueled mass incarceration. So I grew up in the era, the crack era, you know, so during the crack epidemic where, you know, gun violence was prevalent and music was a part of that culture. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So talk about some of those specific musical influences. Like, who were you listening to back in the day? And
I say growing up, my favorite group was Mobb Deep, So you would think about the Mobb Deep, the song "Shook Ones Part 2, Streets Raised Me, the realest with Cool G Rap, Jay-Z. That's one of my favorite rappers. Like the song "Where I'm From," Capone and Noriega with like Halfway Thugs and "Live Long, Live On," and on the War Report album. Those are some of my main ones, like Beanie Siegel, Styles P. So really the gangster rappers.
And how often were you listening to this music?
No, all day, every day. Like I can remember back from like 13 years old, or maybe even before that, just listening to that type of music. So I was always like my thing. I always was into rap music, especially gangster rap.
And do you think that not having like, I guess, a positive male role model to kind of break that down for you and explain kind of the consequences that come with, do you think that plays a part into letting the music kind of influence you a little bit?
Definitely, 100%. I mean, because if you think about it, like those were my role models, rappers, people, individuals in movies, men in society, like Kane. You know what I mean? Old Dog. Like those are the people that I looked up to, my peers looked up to, because that was cool. You know what I'm saying? But I definitely didn't have any positive role models or positive influences. And like I don't even like blame, like I would look at like my dad or even my uncles or older cousins. Like I don't blame them, because I know they fell victim to the same thing. That was intentional, what happened to our communities and our people. So they were just going through their own thing.
Yeah, and you know, looking back, I kind of say that too. It was like I was born in the mid 80s and my parents were a little, you know, my dad did prison time. My mom is an addict. She, you know, she still, you know, suffers back and forth, I guess. And I would just look back and say, you know, that was a wild time, I guess, to be like a teenager, right? In the middle of the crack epidemic in the inner city and everything like that. So yeah, I feel the same way. Like I don't hold no resentment. I don't hold no blame at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
I used to. See, I used to for a long time, and I think I feel like just maturing and evolving and just having a better understanding of just people, you know, what was done to our communities and like the government's hand, like even the government being responsible for the crack epidemic, and how you look at like, you know, some of the things like the crime bill, the war on drugs, you know, fueling mass incarceration. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
okay, so you're in the streets. You drop out of school. I mean, is that like a full-time thing, or did you get a job at all?
No, I never ever had a job in my life. Honestly, I think I had 2 jobs. My father got me a job. I worked one day, quit. Then he got me another job. I worked one day, quit. So like just working, I don't know why. I just never was with that. So I just always just like hustling, just little petty hustling, things like that in the street. Lost. I was real lost and, you know, immature. Like I said, no guidance, no positive role models to learn from. I definitely don't have a working career.
Yeah, and I think it's an instant gratification too, because you go to a job and then it's like you got to wait 2 weeks. They hold a week. You got to wait 2 weeks for that first check. Whereas if you're doing other things, it's kind of more that instant money. And sometimes you don't have 2 weeks. You know, you got some things you need now.
Right. Or one.
Exactly. And so at what age does the police start to get involved with your life?
Damn, 17, I would say. I got right when I turned 17, that was my first arrest. So you would say adult arrest, yeah, 17 years old. And it was just ongoing until now.
Okay, so what happened with that first arrest? Was it something small?
When I was out in Medford, I felt like the Medford police was always at me anyway. And there was like a car situation where they tried to say I was in a car, a stolen car, which I wasn't even in the car, honestly. I'm really actually innocent of that. And so the lady ended up saying that I got out of the car. I told her I wasn't in the car, but she know that because she seen who got out, and she know I wasn't in the car, but still. So she targeted me, she chased me. You know, they ended up going to my mom's house, convincing her to tell me to turn myself in. I had to turn myself in. They said they just wanted to talk to me, but when I went to the station with her, they locked me up.
And that was your first time locked up. So growing up, was that like a regular thing? Did you have family members getting locked up? Anything like that? Friends?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my father did a little bit of time. My uncles have done time, cousins, like, yeah, friends. Like, that was definitely the norm, incarceration.
Yeah, and looking back, that's kind of, do you feel like that's kind of messed up that that's normalized?
Definitely, definitely.
And why is that?
Well, we normalize something that's abnormal. That's an inhumane thing to normalize, incarceration, modern day slavery. And now, if you look at the way they monetize it, like the prison industrial complex, that's really the end goal of this work that we're doing, is to abolish the prison industrial complex and what they're doing, and try to reverse mass incarceration. So I hear a lot of talk about criminal law reform, but like, I don't see enough focus on mass incarceration. That's really the key issue.
Yeah,
I was in the yard the other day, and I was talking to one of my bros, and I was just telling him, like, look around. It was mostly black and brown faces, especially black, and it was mostly young men. And I know most of them, they have life sentences. They're walking around here with life sentences just lost.
And I think a big part too is the whole prisons for profit, right? Running a prison for profit. I mean,
yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, that's really what the prison industrial complex is. It's the profiting off of the prison, and it's modern day slavery. And if you look at the 13th Amendment, that was the language. Slavery is illegal unless someone's convicted of a felony. So now they find a new way to have slaves, which is just incarceration. Lock them up. Now they have all these different provisions and statutes, and it's amplified in black and brown communities, which is why there's so many of us in here overcharged and oversentenced.
So fair to say, with the kind of normalization of people getting locked up, having family members getting locked up, when you got arrested that first time, it really wasn't no big deal. It wasn't nothing to deter you from keep living the life you were living and doing what you were doing?
Nah, because I honestly didn't know how to live any other way. Like, that was how I knew how to survive. I mean, my parents were there but weren't there. Like, when realizing my parents and their struggles, they didn't know how to be there for us the way that our parents should be. And I don't even like to blame them, because like I said, they were going through their own thing. So yeah, just trying to figure it out on my own. And the way I knew was what I seen. Like I said, what I heard in the music, what I seen in the movies, what I seen going on around me. The main thing to do was hustle, figure it out.
Yeah, and I get that. And so I got a younger brother. He's doing a second degree life bid right now, and me and him are like 2 years in age, right? But then when I was like 11, my mom had another kid, and she was a single mother, you know what I mean, and all that. So I feel like by the time we're like 14, 15, at those pivotal ages where maybe we should be more encouraged to do more with school or work or figure out plans, she's still changing diapers, you know what I mean? So she's pretty much making sure we have a roof over our head, clothes on our back, and then we had each other. Like you said, we was all we had, and I felt like it wasn't she had to take care of somebody who needed a little bit more monitoring than a couple teenagers, and we were pretty much free to roam. You know what I mean? Do as we please, pretty much. And I felt like that was a part of that, was like not having that guidance, really kind of just do whatever. If you're gonna tell a kid to do whatever they want to do, they're gonna do it.
and it's deeper too. Like, even if you look at, so I had this thing on my folder, and it's a picture of a man and a boy, right? And they both dressed exactly alike. They both have on jeans, a white T-shirt, and they have a D hat, a Detroit hat. And it says every father should remember that one day his son will follow his example, not his advice. So it's easy to tell someone, hey, do the right thing, do this and do that. But then what are you doing? If you're not doing what you're telling me to do, like, tell me to do the right thing, but you're not doing the right thing, I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to follow what you're saying. I'm going to follow what you're doing, which is wrong.
Right, especially where a lot of times, and I think the message gets lost, is people will be like, oh, don't do this because it's bad and you'll go to jail or prison if you get caught. Whereas instead, I feel like they should be like, oh, don't do this when you can do this and make a bag, when you can sign up for the union or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just tell, don't do that because I said so and it's bad, right? You got to kind of give it a little bit more deeper. And that's why I like bringing people, you know, who are out and who have made something of themselves so they could give that advice. You know what I mean? Do you think that's a fair thing to say too, is just telling people? Yeah.
Definitely. Like leading by example. So that's really how I live today. So it's easy to tell someone the right thing to do, but just like every day I lead by example. So I do the right thing, and I know that there are people that look up to me. I know I'm an influence to people. So I don't want to mislead or misguide the young people. So I just do the right thing. I lead by example, and hopefully they follow. If they don't, they don't. But it's like they won't be able to look to me as the negative role model. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like I was that when I was younger. So I feel responsible. Like my brother's here with me on this camp doing a life sentence like me. And we're not Cody's. So he and my little cousin, they're co-defendants. You know what I'm saying? And like my brother flipped his case and he got reconvicted recently. But it's like to see him around here with me and to know that I had a hand in why he was living the way he was, you know, that weighs on me because I showed him certain things that I regret, but I showed him those things so he can survive in case I wasn't around. Because honestly, like a lot of my peers growing up, the culture, the way of life we lived, a lot of individuals weren't making it to see 18 or 21. You weren't expected to live to 30. You know what I'm saying? So dying young was a norm. So the norm was a parent burying their children, burying their son. So, you know, it's sad to say that I kind of, in a way, was expecting that. So I taught my little brother how to survive in case I wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I feel that as well with my situation too, with my little brother. I always think like, man, I don't know, like even with myself, kind of like, man, if all my friends was going to the military, I might have went to the military. If they all went to the you know what I mean? But the people that I was hanging out with, they weren't doing that. They were hustling. They were getting money, you know, the wrong way. And that's kind of what I gravitated towards. So it's a lot of your environment. Am I correct to assume that?
Yeah, what they say, you are who your friends are. Birds of a feather flock together.
That's right. So talk about
and environmental, definitely.
I just want to bring it back to that case. What ends up coming of that first case? Is it a probation thing?
Yeah, it was so yeah, that's what happened. So I ended up getting probation for that. I ended up eventually violating probation. Then a little while later, I ended up catching another charge. You know, they charged me with distributing crack cocaine and marijuana. You know, they had raided my mom's spot. I ended up getting probation for that. Then I ended up violating that. Then I caught another charge, you know, an 05, which was another weed charge. You know, they charged with distribution then. You know, then I got arrested for this case, which was a murder. And while I was sitting, I ended up pleading out to that weed charge, and I ended up doing a year in South Bay. Then I went back, fought my case, and then I ended up getting found guilty of that.
All right. So just talk a little bit about the first time. We talked about your first arrest now, and what was a couple violations, but the first time you end up being locked up.
Well, the first time that I was locked up was the violation. I did it was like not even 30. They gave me a 30-day sentence for the violation because the probation was actually almost over. So I violated right before it was. They gave me 30 days. I did that time in Bill Rick. I was probably only there for like 2.5 weeks or something like that because you got like 12.5 days a month off or something like that every month. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really feel like it when I think back, I don't really feel like that hit me heavy. I think the most devastating thing about that situation was probably my cousin getting killed while I was in there and learning about it while I was in there. You know what I'm saying?
So just talk about that a little bit. Is an experience and the loss of a loved one while incarcerated. I mean, it's not like you could go with the homies and you know, drink and smoke. You know what I mean? Like the things that we would do, even though we probably shouldn't be. Like looking back, we normalize that too. When you know, normal people might not do that. They lose their sister and their brother, and they don't smoke weed and drink. But I mean, just talk about dealing with that on the inside and what that's like for someone who may not know.
I don't know. I don't even think I talked about it much. Like, just, you know, as a boy growing up, you know, you're taught, you know, to be hurt or to be vulnerable is to be weak and not to show emotion. So I don't feel like I wasn't a show emotion type of individual. So I was very quiet. I feel like I was militant. You know, I really didn't do a whole lot of talking, and definitely wasn't about to express how I felt or any of that. I really don't even think I talked about it much, you know, throughout the years until probably incarceration.
Okay,
you know,
maybe you might not have talked
and
about it, but what was your mindset like? You know what I mean, during all this?
You want to know what's crazy about that? I didn't even know that that person was my cousin until I was told that that was my cousin. So I used to go to this skating rink called Chez Vouls. That was like that was my getaway. You know what I'm saying? Like outside of just being outside drinking and smoking, like that was my getaway. That was like my second home. And I just loved just skating at Chez Vouls. And my cousin Clyde, he always was there. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't even know he was my cousin at that time. But we were actually all right. Like I was real cool with him. You know, then when I seen it in the paper, I didn't even know at that moment it was my cousin until I think I talked to my dad, and he said, you know, you heard your cousin Clyde got killed? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And when he said it, I'm like, yeah, that was my cousin. I didn't even know that. So my feeling was like, for one, damn, I'm learning that this is my cousin. And all the time I knew him, didn't even know that that was my family, and I never got a chance to like build with him on that level. And then he died. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Or got killed.
That just goes to show you, you know, life is short. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Life is short. So you get out. You get out of what? You said Billerica. What's the situation like now? You still got open cases and probation and everything after those 2 weeks?
Nah. After that, so I was done. I didn't have anything after that because I wasn't catching like a bunch of cases on top of like cases and having a bunch of open cases. Like basically that one was closed, and then that's when you know, I started like selling crack a little bit and shit like that, and weed, and you know, I ended up getting arrested for that. So then that was a new case. Eventually, I got put on probation after pleading out, and yeah, and violating that. Yeah, so
and you violated that with the case you're in on now?
No.
Okay, you violated.
Damn, did I violate? I think that one was actually. So the car one, I don't even know if I did violate. So I think that, yeah, maybe they were together. So when I did that time, I think that was because of the violation of both, maybe.
Okay. So,
yeah, that's deep.
So, I mean, getting arrested for murder, I mean, how does that happen? Do you get like a summons one day? Do they arrest you out and about? They come to your crib?
Oh, nah, they came and got me from people's crib, man. Dragged me out of the bed. And mind you, I was drinking all night, probably for like 4 something in the morning. They dragged me out of the bed at like 5 in the morning, threw me on the floor, guns pointed at me. Everyone was yelling at me like they were angry with me. So it was definitely crazy treatment. You know, bumped to the station and just, yeah, that's trauma on top of trauma.
Yeah, facts. Did they tell you your charges? When did you?
They told me I was under arrest for murder. Yeah.
Okay, so what's going through your mind at that point?
Damn.
Just a lot of anger, frustration. I mean,
I can't even say I was angry. I don't know. Maybe I was afraid. I can't say the exact emotions I was feeling at that time, but I knew it was serious. Definitely knew it was serious.
So, I mean, now where do they hold you at for your trial? Did they violate you and then you had to go to South Bay or Nashua Street?
Yeah, I ended up being in I was in Cambridge because it was a Middlesex case.
Oh, Middlesex.
And then, like I said, I had an open weed charge, which is what made me go to South Bay. I pled out to that weed charge. So I did a year in South Bay while I was waiting trial for the murder. And then when I was done, they brought me back to Cambridge. And then I ended up going to trial a little while after that the following year. So
what's your lawyer telling you about trial? Is he telling you got a shot at beating this? Like, what's going on there?
I don't recall a lot of conversation with my lawyer. I feel like we didn't have the best communication. I didn't trust my lawyer. Like my first interview with my lawyer, he asked me if I committed the crime that I was charged with. I told him no. And then he asked me if I didn't commit the crime, why are they saying you did it? Right off rip, I didn't trust him at all. There was no trust.
Yeah, that's funny energy.
So I wasn't even and I wasn't even able to work with him or tell him anything because there was a mistrust right off the rip established.
Yeah. At any point before trial, do they try to get you to plead out or anything like that?
All right, so I don't recall ever having a conversation about a plea deal, but he tried to tell me, I wrote him in 2013 when someone was telling me there was a plea deal issue and that I should find out if there was ever a plea deal offered. So I wrote him and asked him that there was a plea deal offered. He tried to tell me that they offered 10 years and I didn't accept it, but I was confused because I'm like, I don't remember you ever talking to me about a 10-year plea deal. But in the letter, he's saying that there was a 10-year plea deal, that I turned it down.
I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
When your life's on the line, fair to say, I mean, I feel like you would remember something like that, no?
Yeah, and I would have took a plea deal. First of all, 10 years. I'm charged with first-degree murder of someone and then attempted murder of someone else. So 10-year deal, I mean, I would have took that, especially like my whole history is me pleading to a lesser included offense. So my whole history is taking plea deals.
Like looking back, why do you think, A, the lawyer didn't tell you about this plea bill? I mean, this plea bargain, and why do you think he lied about it?
So looking back, you know, after learning what I've learned, is that if he took me to trial, he would be able to bill and make more money on my case. So the way it works is when you get CPCS assigned counsel, they bill for services on your case. So if they're on your case longer, they can bill for longer and make more money. So me learning that, obviously I didn't know any of this years ago, but me learning that and having a better understanding of that, I learned that he was acting under a conflict of interest. And he was more so working on the interest of himself and on the prosecution. And by him keeping my case longer and stringing me along and pushing me to go to trial, like I said, he'd make more money, and he was able to set it up for the prosecution where they can get a first-degree murder sentence.
And what kind of things? How does this billing work? Do you know?
All right, so they bill. So trial lawyers and appellate lawyers bill for different categories. So it's called key categories, and they bill by the category. So an example, when I got the billing history report of my trial attorney, his name is Earl Howard. When I got the billing history report of him, he billed for 22 in-person client interviews and received funds for that. But when I got the jail records, it showed he only came to see me 9 times. So he was billing for services that he didn't perform. He was committing fraud. He was committing perjury. So there's a form I have called the billing confirmation form, and the attorneys must fill this out when they bill, and they bill electronically. So the language is that they're billing under the pains and penalties of perjury, that they perform the services that they're billing for, that they follow the CPCS assigned counsel manual, and that they follow the Massachusetts Rules of Professional Conduct. But he violated all of those. So that's fraud, that's perjury, it's wire fraud. Like he just was going in, and he's acting under a conflict of interest because him billing for services that he's not performing on my case is self-serving. So that's in his interest, not mine.
Do you think people who, like lawyers and DAs and cops and judges, doing what they do to uphold the law or prosecute it or protect their clients from it, do you think they should be held to like a higher standard than your average?
They definitely should.
Being in a position of power? Yeah, talk about that.
Of course they should. And then if you really think about it, so a lot of this goes to mental state, the mind. And you're dealing with individuals, say if you come from inner city community, you might know certain things are wrong and you're not supposed to do it and you could go to jail, but you don't really have an understanding of the law. So you're ignorant to the law. And part of these things are knowledge. So when they're doing what they're doing, they know what they're doing. They have a criminal liability. The key in criminal liability is the intent. So they're intending to do wrong, and they're doing wrong. And they're doing it as public officers of the court, public officials. Like these are people that, like you said, are supposed to be in high standing. They have professional responsibilities. They have ethical responsibilities. And they're violating those and breaking the law at the same time. And then they're violating their clients' rights.
Yeah, they swear these oaths and everything too when they get their positions, jobs, or whatever.
And the scariest part, like for me, the public needs to know that when these lawyers, let's just look at the lawyers alone, when they're billing for these services and they're stealing this money, they're stealing taxpayers' dollars. So that's something that is important to understand. That's taxpayers' dollars that they're stealing when they bill for these services that they're not providing. And me doing this work, So I've got a project I'm about to put out called the CPCS Accountability Project. And it's going to focus on these lawyers stealing money. And so the project is to hold the Committee for Public Counsel Services Private Counsel Division accountable for the negligent handling of client cases, which have led to wrongful convictions disproportionately impacting Black and brown population here in Massachusetts. So the project objective is to bring awareness to concerns related to CPCS assigned counsel in criminal matters, an audit and investigation into the Criminal Private Counsel Division. We want accountability for the wrongdoing. We want redress for the wrongfully convicted, and we want compensation for those harms.
Absolutely. So say someone's watching this and just your average citizen or whatever, and they want to help. Is there any way, how can they help? How can you recommend?
All right, so right now we have a social media platform. It's as BRODI Academy. So it's capital BRODI Academy. The A in Academy is capital, but everything else I think is lowercase. And that's at Facebook. So you can go to BRODI Academy, reach out.
Okay.
I should have actually a social media platform up specifically for that project.
Okay.
In the near future as well. But I'll definitely get information to you. And we definitely need all the support and assistance we can get, because the whole point of this is to make the Commonwealth a better place. Because individuals, when I look at, people in inner city communities, let's just look at the trauma. When we spoke about, the environmental factors, things that are going on in our neighborhoods. There's things that we normalize that are not normal. And one of the things that is normalized is incarceration. Individuals are going to go to jail. And then they're going to go from jail to prison. And these attorneys that are being assigned to be advocates are actually acting as adversaries. And they're working in concert with the prosecution. So just think about it. Imagine, right, giving a white supremacist a law license and letting them represent Black and brown.
Right.
Like, you already know what the results are going to be. So that's what I see going on. Like, when I'm dealing with these lawyers, these white lawyers, like the last lady that screamed my case, like, I could just feel that she was racist. I could feel that, she didn't value my life, value my work. Like, she dehumanized me, the way she talked to me. And it's like an arrogance. Like, she just knew she was protected. She knew she was safe. And then, like, learning more about this is like, when she wrote me a letter, I wrote her a letter asking her for documents related to her screening on my case. She told me that she didn't have to turn them over, and that her and I never had a lawyer-client relationship. CPCS was her client instead. So she's putting on paper, basically, that she's acting under a conflict of interest, and she wasn't there to help me. She was just trying to cover for CPCS.
Damn. So what are you thinking when you hear about this?
What was I thinking?
Like, is this what sparked the whole thing? Yeah. Is this what started the whole evolution of alternative?
So prior to that, I was already I was part of something called the Harriet Tubman Project. So I was doing work in the Harriet Tubman Project, focusing on inequities in CPCS. But I ended up departing just because inequities that I felt were within that. I just didn't want to partake anymore. So I knew that there had to be something created specifically for the people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why me and my bro, Tony Harris, we founded BRODI, Black Rights Organization Dismantling Inequities. And I wanted to continue that work, but, an elevated role. So now it wasn't me being under someone trying to do this work. It was as a boss doing this work the way that I seen needed it to be done. It needed to be a focus. Yeah. So this is something elaborate. It's going to take a lot, but it's going to lead to people going home, because that's what justice is. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, the whole purpose of this system is justice, and the way that things are being handled is not just. Yeah. It's really not. It's just about convictions. Yeah. And these prosecutors are not supposed to be doing this for conviction. They're supposed to be doing it for justice.
Mm-hmm.
So the foundation of justice is integrity, and the foundation of integrity is accountability. And they're not acting with integrity, and they need to be held accountable.
Yeah, I always call it the conviction system, because it's really not about justice at all. I think, I don't know. I think there needs to be some sort of incentive for them to, I don't know, maybe get more, knowing someone's innocent and then still actually just trying to get the conviction because it suits your career or your pocketbook or whatever. I feel like there should be some sort of incentive for DAs to be truthful and honest when they see something and they know in their heart that this man's innocent. Like that should be worth like 10 convictions. Letting one man go should be worth 10 convictions in the eyes of their career or whatever. But I don't know. How do you think we got to the point we got to?
In regard to what? Because there's a lot.
Where it's all about the convictions.
I feel like our country is based on white supremacy ideologies, and it's about just punishment when it comes to us. Once, like I said, the 13th Amendment with the incarceration language, where slavery was illegal unless you're convicted of a felony. So now the only way we can enslave these people is if they're convicted of a felony. So let's create laws and provisions to target their communities and lock them up. Yeah. So if you just look at mass incarceration, that was really stemmed from the crack epidemic. Mm-hmm. So before that, it was the heroin epidemic and then the crack epidemic. But crack epidemic really is what fueled mass incarceration, and it was the crime bill, the war on drugs, those full visions. They declared the crack epidemic a problem before it even was. Right. And then they created things to lock us up. So it's intentional. That goes back to what I said. The intent was to be what it is now. When I'm seeing all these black and brown young men with these sentences, that was the intention. And now they monetize it. So now we can put them in jail and get rich off of them like we did in slavery. Servitude. That's what we're doing. So when we look at let's look at the mental state, right? If you look at inner city communities, urban communities, and what we normalize abnormal behavior. Mm-hmm. So let's just think about some of the things we hear in music. Let's go get at them. So load up guns, get in the car, and let's go look for somebody. Mm-hmm. That is hunting humans. Right. Just think about 3 or 4 individuals getting in the car, loading up firearms, and hunting humans. How is that normal? That's abnormal. There's something wrong with everyone that partakes in that. So say they do that, and then they get arrested if someone gets shot or killed. Even if they just get shot and don't get killed. But imagine if they get killed. You're arresting these individuals, charging them with those crimes, which are specific intent felonies, and then you're not even having them psychologically assessed to see what their mental state was at the time of offense. That's an injustice in itself. But then let's go to the other side. If some white boys was to do the same exact thing, they would be psychologically assessed. Like when I watch the news now, I see certain white men, they're getting charged with murders. They're being sent to Bridgewater, or they're being psychologically evaluated. That's a form of protection that we're not receiving. Mm. And if we come from communities where trauma is heavy, like we're very, very traumatized to the point where a lot of the things we do are trauma responses. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Living in a state of fight or flight most of your life, always being on defense, always on the edge, always thinking someone's out to get you. That is a problem. And when I look at the criminal legal system, I've been down 19 years. I'm in a place full of traumatized men, and there's no trauma program. That's intentional. Mm. And they're not even addressing the root of the issue. You know what I'm saying? Wow. Like, I got a letter from this lady from Compassion Prison Project, and she told me, this was like 2021, she said, you guys are all there because of your trauma. So they're knowing that. They know trauma is the root, and they're not even addressing it. And then they're putting people in here, psychological and emotional torture, and then sending them back out to society. All fucked up.
And how do you feel about the mental health in there too? Because I feel like it's mostly, okay, are you gonna hurt yourself or hurt somebody else? Okay, no, you're good. And then that's all they do with you. That's all that is that fair?
That's all it is. That's all it's about. And they document. So I actually did like a test with them. They didn't know, but I know. So I went and I started documenting. And I wanted to just go through the experience just from hearing individuals talk about it. I wanted to see it for myself, and I started during the pandemic. So I started talking to them. They opened up a file on me, started talking to me. Every time I went, they took notes. And every single time I went, I talked about my stress and trauma related to CPCS and assigned counsel. And every time I talked about it, they failed to put CPCS. They never put CPCS not one time. They would just say legal. Mm. So I'm wondering, I'm told they didn't expect me probably to ask for the notes. So one day I did. I asked for all the notes from all the interviews. They sent them to me. and they didn't document CPCS not one time. Why would they protect CPCS? Like,
right.
So it made me tell them, listen, I don't want to talk to you. I don't trust you. She asked me why, and I told her why. She still was not even respecting me telling her I didn't want to talk to her. She called me maybe 2 or 3 more times.
Wow.
The last time I told her, I said, listen, if you call me again, I'm going to put a restraining order on you. You're harassing me. She never called me again.
So what's your opinion or theory on why they would be protecting CPCS?
Because it's all interconnected. If we're in here, if you got to think about it, if individuals catch a serious felony, CPCS appoints counsel. CPCS works with the prosecution to get a conviction. Now, on the back end, CPCS gives counsel to appeal your case. That lawyer sells you out. Then they give you another lawyer to screen your case.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's true because I had 6 different lawyers from CPCS handle my case. 5 of them screened. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's 6 different lawyers that made money off of my case, and I'm still here. Not because I don't have issues to go home,
Mm-hmm.
but because they won't set me free intentionally.
So do you think they should have, like me just hearing all this sounds like a good idea. Let me know what you think about it. If maybe they should have their mental health come from people who are not paid by the same people, maybe come from outside contractors or outside people instead of in the system. Do you think that would help? And what's your thoughts on like real therapy and if that would work and how to get it work?
I definitely think that would be a better way to go about it, because you can't. It's like the police and the police. That's never gonna work. Like they don't provide these services to us for our benefit. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not about, they say rehabilitation and treatment, but that's not what this is about. This is about punishment.
Yeah.
That's what they focus on, punishment.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't think that, being that Massachusetts is, they try to portray it as like a, restorative justice kind of place, but it doesn't seem like that's actually what they're going by.
But it's language, though. I mean, they give you that illusion.
Yeah, talking points and stuff.
Right. It's like they say that Massachusetts isn't really a racist state, but it's probably one of the most racist states. And if you look at the history of it, just digging into it, you know what I mean? It's very racist. And a lot of the places we know, like Faneuil Hall, these individuals were slave owners.
Mm.
Like, there's a place in Bedford called the Royal House and Slave Quarters, I think it's called.
Wow.
And at one point, the royal family was the largest slaveholders in Massachusetts at a certain point.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And the Medford police, like, they're very racist. And I have a document where they listed me as a Negro on it. And this is a document from like 2005. They called me a Negro on paper. Like, that's the description, Negro.
That's insane.
You know what I'm saying?
This day and age.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. And have you faced any like personal racism, or just like more on a systemic level in Massachusetts?
Systemic, yeah, institutional, yeah. I feel like I've dealt with racism my entire life, but personal, I would say I started realizing racism when I first moved on. Moms and then moved us to Medford when I was younger, probably around like 10 years old or something. It was when they first moved us to Medford, and it was like a culture shock because I wasn't used to being around a bunch of white people.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Medford, that was new to me, and I dealt with racism directly, like, calling me a nigga type shit.
So it wasn't like no passive-aggressive stuff. They were outwardly, blatantly being racist.
Nigga. Like, you nigga? Like, I didn't belong there type shit.
So being locked
and I'm
up.
a child at 10.
So being locked up for as long as you have, and having your brother, locked up too, what effect do you think that has had on your family?
Oh, major effect on my family. It's destroyed the family. I mean, me being in for as long as I have, my brother's been down since 2013. Parents struggling. Both of their only sons are both incarcerated with natural life sentences. Of course, yeah, definitely devastating for the family. And then dealing with family that struggled as it is.
Yeah.
Financially, helping out, financially to make sure we're good over time. So, yeah.
You have 1 minute left.
Major effect. I'm gonna call you back.
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
So we're just talking about family, right? So I guess talk about that first conversation, I guess, with your mom or somebody when you're locked up and you get these serious charges. Like, what's that like?
I can't even remember because I feel like, you know, when I was in county fighting this charge, I was very lost.
Yeah.
I was immature. You know, I realized, you know, once I learned more that I wasn't even competent.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, even though I've been in the system, I didn't fully understand or grasp what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, how it worked. I didn't even understand fully the function of trial counsel, you know, the prosecution and the judge. Like I thought, even though I know that's true now,
Mm-hmm.
but then I actually thought that the judge and the DA were together and my lawyer was against them. But I realized that, you know, they all supposed to play their own individual role to ensure justice, but they actually were all, it was like a lynching.
Yeah.
We're all three of them together. But like just not knowing what to say.
Right.
You know what I mean? When I got arrested, I wasn't at the level or time in my life where I was able to articulate myself and express how I felt.
Right. Let's talk about that leading, like we just talked about trial and the judge and the DA. So let's talk about leading up to trial. You're getting closer to trial. I'm sure you know the magnitude of what you're facing if you lose at trial. What's your confidence level like going into this trial?
I don't think I thought much about it. Like, you know, the reality didn't fully set in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like there was so many different things on my mind. So prior to me going to trial, so when I got arrested, my son's mother was 3 months pregnant, and he was born while I was incarcerated.
Wow.
So, you know, I'm seeing him, you know, in the behind the glass while I'm in Cambridge, you know, thinking about those things, you know, hoping to go home. You know, I didn't really realistically think that I was about to get found guilty, but I really don't even think that I put a whole lot of thought into that. I didn't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that, you know, looking back, my lawyer didn't really tell me much. I didn't even know what my defense was. Honestly, looking back and looking at my paperwork, I didn't even have a defense. He was just basically saying the guy that said I did it lied. He didn't even have a defense. Like, okay, the defense is this. So I went to trial with no defense, really.
Wow. And were you looking to even ask your lawyer about a plea deal or anything like that at that point? I know you said that he said later that they but like you weren't even thinking that. You were just
I wasn't even thinking that at all. Yeah, I really didn't put a lot of thought to that. I feel like a lot of my mind and attention was on like my son, you know, my son's mother, things like that. I don't really think I put a whole lot of thought into the criminal case and what I needed to do on my end, or you know what was going on with the lawyer. Like I know that I wasn't competent.
And what about the actual trial? I mean, was it like a blur? Did you even understand the language they were using?
It was like a blur. Like, because a lot of the time at trial, I just sat there and doodled on the notepad, wrote certain stuff down, but it wasn't like writing stuff down deliberately and paying attention. It was just like I really feel like I was 21 when I got arrested, but I had the mind of a teenager. Like I was a child.
Yeah,
I really was. I look back, I was really a child, and I was out of place. Like I didn't understand really everything that was going on. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And how long was your trial? Like, how many days does that last?
Total about 14 days, probably.
Okay, so you're going court every day for 2 weeks, pretty much.
Basically, yeah. You know, taking like a weekend off and shit like that. But yeah, basically 14 days.
And then after they're getting ready to deliberate, well, I mean, what are you thinking? Are you thinking that you're smoked? Are you thinking you got it, or just like what it is?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the court officer. He was kind of cool, older dude, man. You know, I always wondered how he's doing, if he's even alive. Hopefully he is. But yeah, he came to me in the back, you know, and he asked me, he said, "How do you think your lawyer did?" I said, "Man, I don't even know."
Wow.
He's like, but he didn't really say whether he thought he did good or not. But I think he knew that he sold me out.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like the feeling I got from him, and me looking back, I feel like he knew that man sold me out, but he couldn't say it. Like he wasn't going to tell me that.
And it's probably something that he sees on a regular, I'm sure, and that's how he knew.
Because there's a pattern with my trial lawyer that I've learned on my own, just seeing that, he's a black man, but every person I ever met that had him throughout my bid is black and has a life sentence, and CPC has assigned him to everybody. So it's almost like they give him to black and brown men because they know he's going to sell them out. And they like, basically, we won't give you anyone that looks like us. So you can sell your own people out.
Wow. So for the youth out there, they're you know, they're caught up in everything, but maybe we could break through to somebody, man. Just talk about what it's like to get that guilty on something so serious, and how real it really is, and what they can expect if they keep doing what they're doing.
Oh, it's definitely real. It's definitely something you don't want to experience. You definitely deserve better. And I say this just looking back, but when I was out there and just living that dead culture, that destructive culture, that's what it is. It's really a destroy culture. Mm-hmm. Destroy self, destroy others without realizing it. Like, just love yourself, man. Love yourself. Learn to love yourself. Love others. Learn about self. Mm-hmm. First thing I would tell individuals is love your peoples, man. Like, learn about your trauma too, and address your trauma, because I feel like that's the root of why individuals are behaving the way they do. Look up the Adverse Childhood Experiences quiz. It's the ACEs, so it's a 10-question quiz, and it deals with the first prior to your 18th birthday. So basically your childhood trauma. Take that. Learn a little bit about your childhood trauma. You know what I'm saying? And try to get treatment for that and figure out why, you know, you might be behaving that way. You know, who led you down that path. And when you see who that was, look at them and wonder, like, is that who I want to be like? Like, what was their end result? And there's going to be individuals that are putting you in harm's way, and you might not realize it. But if you're younger and you're out there in the streets and individuals are giving you drugs and guns, that's likely not your best bet. You don't want to be here with a life sentence. You know what I mean? You don't want to be in here doing a time period because you're greater than that. Like, you can do anything, but just work on self, work on your evolution. You know what I'm saying? What do you want your legacy to be when you leave this earth? Like, do you want it to be known for what you're doing now, if you're doing that, or, you know, something better, something greater? Go down in the history books. You can do that.
Absolutely.
Especially in this day and age. You have access to AI and the internet. Like, you can be anyone you want to be, so just be great, aim high. And don't let anyone tell you that you're bad or you can't do it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, like, projection, people might feel a certain way about themselves and they project that on you. And they might not believe that they can do anything great. So they want you to feel that way, so they tell you can't be great or that you're bad. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But just like I said, love yourself, bro. Keep your head up out there and just, you know, just work on your evolution.
Absolutely. And be, like you said, be a leader too, man, for these older cats, man. Be a leader to these younger cats, because a lot of times they're just looking for guidance and they just got the wrong guidance. So just be that, be that dude, man. I'm telling you, they'll pay attention. They're at that age where their brains are spongy. Everything's being soaked in, and unfortunately they get a lot of the wrong.
And honestly, I open the door for anybody, like the young ones out there that's going through whatever. And I know growing up, I look back, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have anyone checking in, asking me how I was doing, what was on my mind. If you older, you out there, do that to these young brothers. Ask them what's going on with them, how they feel. And if y'all don't have that out there, reach out to me. Yeah. Dwight Williams, DWIGHT Williams. W number's W90080. I'm at 2 Clark Street, P.O. Box 43, Norfolk, Mass. Zip 02056. Like, write me. Yeah. I'll respond. No bullshit.
Absolutely. Core links too. You got the email. You got the emails are free on Core links as well, people.
Yeah, so you can add me at Core links, exactly. Yeah, and go to that BRODI Facebook too, and then pop up.
Absolutely. So, what year was this when you got sentenced?
I got sentenced in 2007.
So you went to Concord first?
No, I went to Concord. I went to Concord. They put me in a hole for probably about 2 days. Then I was sent to Walpole. I was in Walpole from 2007 to 2009. I went to Shirley Max from 2009, stayed there for a year. 2010, I came here, and I've been here in MCI Norfolk ever since, just trying to get myself right, and I'm ready for that world. I feel like I'm on my way. In the near future, I'm just working on my, overturning this wrongful conviction. I'll be out there, though. Believe that.
Absolutely. So talk about that first experience, though, in Walpole, and why, for the people that don't know, why they put you in the hole in Concord and then send you right to Walpole as opposed to
Yeah,
same
so
class.
just not being able to move around with that natural, and yet when you back then when I came upstate, Walpole was the place. So like if you had certain sentences, you were going to Walpole, and you had to do 2 years behind the wall if you had a first degree life sentence. So that's where I had to go. Yeah, it was tough. Like my second day there, I seen 3, 4 white dudes stab a Puerto Rican dude, and that it set in. Like, damn, I'm really in Walpole. So I was already hearing stories, but to see that, you know what I mean? It's like, damn. And mind you, like, I've always been small my entire life. So when I went to Walpole, I probably was 135 pounds, probably like 5'6", 5'7". So I'm smaller than everybody. I'm younger than everybody. And people called me Little D. So that's where that name Little D came from, because I was one of the youngest and one of the smallest men in the institution at that time, probably in the system.
Wow. So how's it work in the child when you get to the child? How'd you know where to sit? Like, I guess the first, day or two.
Well,
or whenever.
I feel like I was fortunate, just the way I lived life in a way, just meeting a lot of different people from a lot of different neighborhoods. I knew a few of the bros, you know what I'm saying, from the streets, Shevu days, and just being out there, from different neighborhoods. Because I was one of them dudes. I never had beef with no neighborhoods. I was cool with all neighborhoods. I was cool with everybody. I didn't have no beef out there, so I was able to go anywhere. I definitely knew some brothers that was there, a couple older, a couple my age. And I had a few places to sit if needed be, but I ended up sitting at the because they basically like the neighborhood tables. But I sat at like the OP/Carmen Square table with some of the bros, and just because of a few of the bros that I knew from the streets growing up.
And that's something that like Walpole has been around. It's closed now, been around for a while, but those tables are pretty much set like that for years, right?
Individuals probably had them tables for decades.
Yeah. So did you feel because you were young and maybe a little smaller than people, like that you had to turn up right away to kind of show people you wasn't no one to mess with? Did you have older guys? You said you knew a couple older guys. Did they guide you?
I honestly didn't have, I was worried that I might have to, and I was never a coward. So if that's what it took, I would have did that. But people wasn't trying me though. Like, I feel like maybe just the way I carried myself, and I think it also had a lot to do with the circle that I had. Like a lot of the older brothers and brothers that I rock with, they were respected. Those was G'd up. So I was good. Like I didn't really have any issues. You know what I'm saying, I was good while I was there, and I think a lot of people liked me too. The way I carried myself, I was pretty quiet. I mean, I didn't bother anybody, so I was good though. Okay. I actually was fortunate throughout my bid. My entire incarceration, I had no fights. Like, I have no fights on my record. 19 years, not one.
Yeah. And why do you think that is?
That's not easy.
How you carry?
I think it's carrying myself, individuals I dealt with. But I really think it was mainly just how I carry myself. I'm not a troublemaker. Yep. I don't start trouble with anybody. Like I said, I didn't come in with beef with any neighborhood, so that made it a little easier. And I think people just liked me.
Okay, so you didn't get in no fights or anything like that? Any tickets along the way? Any trouble whole time?
Yeah, I had tickets. I probably got like maybe 10 or less tickets throughout my whole incarceration. So I didn't, I feel like early on I was probably catching a few, but the last time I caught any tickets was 2018. So I've been chilling. So
what kind of tickets were you catching? Just small stuff, like out of place?
I dealt with I would say more drinking. So I used to drink a lot, definitely throughout my bid early on. So I was drinking a lot. Yeah. I got a dirty urine when I first came here for smoking weed. Gotcha. So it was stuff like that. It was nothing crazy. You know what I mean?
So why do you think you wanted, looking back, wanted to drink so much? But was it, did you say F it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going through it. Natural life sentence. I started seeing, last time I seen my son was August 3rd on my birthday of 2008. That was the last time I seen him in person. His mother had came up, brought him up, and let her know that she was about to move to Maryland, where my brother was at that time. She was leaving the state because I know the state troopers was harassing her about my case, and just a lot going on. So she wanted to change the scenery, start over. I was just dealing with a lot, though. First natural life sentence. Yeah, I was just going through it, man, trying to figure things out and just dealing with self-destruction, really.
And at what point do you start to make a change from that self-destruction to self-betterment and to become like the man you are today?
I think it took a while, bro. It took a while. I'll say the mid-teens. Like, I'll say when I started getting my GED little by little, 2012, 2013, a little bit, but not really. I started doing little programs throughout the years. But I feel like my real transformation started 2020 when I got documents learning about like psychological evaluations I had conducted when I was younger. When I requested my DCF file in 2020, and I got, you know, different records about my past, learning about myself, I feel like was really what started my transformation and my growth, and just having a better understanding of myself, learning about trauma, reading the book Urban Trauma by Maza Akbar. That's a dope book. I encourage people to go read that. So it's the Urban Trauma, A Legacy of Racism by Maza Akbar. She breaks down urban trauma, the characteristics of urban trauma, and it gave me an understanding of why we behave the way we do in inner city communities, urban communities. It's trauma.
Yeah, no, that I agree. Okay. And what do you think the best way to address that trauma is? Therapy? Do we need to normalize therapy in our society and culture?
I think talking about it. I think finding individuals, for one, that care about you, someone to open up to, just expressing yourself or understanding. Even if you're a man, you know, you can be vulnerable. You can express yourself. That doesn't make you weak. You know what I'm saying? I actually think it's the opposite. I think it makes you strong to be able to express yourself and be vulnerable and share, you know, what you're going through. Like, you got to let that out. Somebody needs to hear that. You need to tell someone that. And maybe therapy, some people might not feel like therapy's for them. Everyone might be different. But I would say, if you could find someone that you trust, you know, that you feel like really cares, and it probably will take time because of trauma. But I feel like, you know, a therapist will be a great way to go. Or even finding what is a calming for you. What's something that makes you feel good? You know what I mean? What's a way for you to relieve stress? It might be basketball. It might be music, rapping. It might be lifting weights. It might be whatever you feel is best for the person.
Yeah, you got to really find what works for you. And
and
like you said, how you like to go skating. Sometimes we forget, you know, what we really like to do because we get so caught up in the craziness of between the drugs and the weed. Yeah. And then so tell me why you wanted to tell your story today.
Just controlling my narrative, bro. I feel like throughout my entire life, people have controlled my narrative and misrepresented me. And I know it's important, and I encourage everyone to control your narrative. You tell your story. That's why they say his story. It's your story. No one's better to tell your story for you than you. So control your narrative.
You have 1 minute left.
All right.
I'm gonna hit you back.
Yep. Cool. So you've been up to a lot of positive things since you've been in. Why is it important to have that positive attitude? Because I'm sure it's pretty easy to slide into the negative.
I feel like it's just for self and for other people. You know what I mean? Like, for me, I knew I had to change, not just for myself, but also for others. So, like I said, I got a brother that's in here. I got other young brothers and even older brothers that look up to me. And, you know, I've been told since like 2010 by a brother that, you know, I was a beautiful dude. You know, I had a great heart. You know, that I had a great mind. You know, I'm not the average. And like, I didn't see that for a long time until I started doing this work and just learning more about self.
Absolutely.
And I just embraced that, you know, that leader role. And I didn't realize even back in the day that I was a leader in a way, and I didn't follow people, and that some people followed me, and that I had influence, but I didn't see it that way. I just looked at them as those are my bros, and we just hung together. I didn't notice that they followed me, even some of them that were a little older than me. You know what I'm saying? I had leadership qualities. But change is like, it's a need. You know what I'm saying? Like, why live a dead culture? That's what I was living. It was a dead culture. It was destruction. Like I said, destroy self, destroy others, and I didn't want to be like that. Once I realized that it was really wrong and how deeply wrong it was, I didn't want to be like that.
What's been your proudest moment in these last few years?
My proudest moment, the last few years, I think doing this work and knowing that I'm doing it not for myself but for others, and that it's going to bring positive results for others that had no hope left. Like, there are individuals right now that are sentenced to die in prison with natural life sentences that have been down 30, 40 years, and in their mind, they're never going home. And I hope that one day, you know, for me doing this work, that they will have a chance to go home, that their conviction will be overturned, even if it's because the lawyers did something wrong, whatever it takes. But individuals don't deserve to die here. That's just how I see it. Like, this is an inhumane practice. Yeah. And doing this work gives me a purpose, a passion, and a form of fulfillment. You know, I feel good doing this work because I know it's helping people.
I mean, how important is that to have a purpose doing a natural life sentence, bro?
Oh, it's very important. I mean, I could be around here doing anything. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so much negativity to be distracted with, and, you know, I'm proud of myself every day because I'm not distracted by that. Yeah. And I actually pull up on the brothers that are and try to inspire them and encourage them and uplift them and seeing that they're down, but still telling them that they're great. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, you're going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. You're great. And, like, when certain brothers pull up on me and ask me, you know, for advice on the lawyer, even when it's just about the lawyers that they're dealing with, because they know I'm on that fight. Mm-hmm. That makes me feel good because I know I'm serving a purpose. I know I'm helping. You know, even if it's just giving advice on information. Mm-hmm. You know, how should I handle this with the lawyer? Being able to tell them something that they can leave with and use. That's positive. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So why don't you talk a little bit about your appeal process and how that went and all of that for the people who don't know how that works.
So when I dealt with my appeal, so my situation is first degree murder conviction, you have a right to automatic appeal, which means you can appeal the conviction. You know, I was assigned another counsel from CPCS. Me and him, we weren't seeing eye to eye really early on. I had an issue that I wanted to raise, the courtroom closure. So you have a public trial right, you know, to have the public as part of your trial, and that right was denied. They closed my courtroom. So it's even in my transcripts, and I was trying to get him to raise that claim, and he wouldn't. And he didn't. He ended up raising the claims that he wanted to. And I ended up learning later on that if he would have raised that claim, I would have overturned my conviction in 2010. However, he didn't. Wow. And then CPCS assigned him again to screen my case for the issue that he didn't raise to look at the same issue, which is a conflict of interest, because he can't argue ineffective assistance on himself, and they knew that. But they still did it. And then every attorney after has protected him. So I know that if I had an attorney that was protecting my rights and interests, I would go home. I will go home when that happens. Okay. But I don't have funds for an attorney. And the appeals process right now, I would like to do a Rule 30 motion for a new trial in the near future and get certain experts that will be able to highlight the inequities in my case that led to my wrongful conviction. And I'm just, you know, going to continue to do this work until that happens. But absolutely. I've definitely learned a lot about the criminal legal system and the rules that apply, and just, you know, having the literacy of the rules of law, how they apply to my case, and understand that my conviction was a wrongful one, and eventually it'll be overturned and I'll be out there.
And what do you think is the most important thing that you have learned about, you know, the law and doing your research and all that, or more impactful?
What's the most impactful thing I've learned? I've learned my rights, and that I have guaranteed rights, due process rights, a right to a fair trial, right to attorney, effective assistance of an attorney, and learning that what violations occurred in my case, you know, and which violations that occurred that will help me get a new trial and will ultimately get me free. So I feel like those are the most important things. And the conflict of interest thing, learning that was huge, because I realized that my lawyer was definitely not working in my best interest. He was working with the prosecution.
And what about yourself? What have you learned about yourself and all this time to self-reflect and everything like that?
Trauma, I feel like, is really the key. That's why I keep saying that. Trauma was the key. Like, learning about my trauma and how a lot of things I did in life were trauma responsive. You know, and learn how to deal with that better. Not that I've overcome all my trauma, or even like growing up with a learning disability, being in special education, and, you know, I feel like overcoming that to a certain extent. Like, a lot of people will hear me articulate myself and wouldn't believe I had a learning disability growing up.
Absolutely. I mean, you speak well, you articulate yourself very well. And we spoke a little bit about, you know, with the music and even Hollywood and the movies, there's kind of almost this incentive or at least glorification or glamorization of like the streets. Even like it's like a feather in the cap. Maybe you did a little time, you stood on 10, you didn't tell on nobody, right? You come out, you kind of. So what's the worst thing about all of this stuff, bro? I like to get that out there. What's the worst thing about prison?
The worst thing about prison is being deprived of your liberty and freedom, and dealing with the dehumanization, the institutional violence, not being able to be there for your loved ones. If you got children, not being able to be there to raise your children. Young ones looking up to you, following you. You know what I'm saying?
Nope.
And you sending the wrong message. So I feel like all of it's the worst about prison. There's nothing good I can say. Even though I've come, and I'll be honest, I really feel like if I didn't come to prison, I would probably be living the same way if I would even be alive. So even though I wish I didn't have to go through this experience. I feel like there were goods that are going to come out of it that I do appreciate about this experience, although I definitely don't appreciate this experience. But I would rather be out there raising my son and being out there with my family.
For sure, for sure. And what was the biggest message that you wanted to get across during this interview for people to really, if they can only hold on to one thing that you say, man, what's that?
Love self.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Give to others. Love others.
Absolutely.
I mean, community building. Respecting people.
Yep.
I mean, respecting yourself, loving yourself.
Yeah. No, that's very important.
Hopefully, and also hopefully people just supporting, the work that me and my brother Tony's doing with BRODI. Like I said, going to that BRODI Academy page, liking that, supporting the CPCS Accountability Project that's coming up soon. We'll have a campaign for a petition signing for a special audit and investigation into the Private Counsel Criminal Division of CPCS. So people supporting that, signing that petition. Got a questionnaire soon for individuals that had experiences with CPCS assigned counsel. So we want to gather information and collect data regarding their experiences. So there's definitely things upcoming that definitely would love some support, even people volunteering, assisting in those endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
And just everybody staying strong, man, just showing love, man. Walking around and not always worried about what you don't have, but appreciating the things that you do have. You know what I mean? That's another thing.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say, I wish I had this, I don't have that, and complaining, but, appreciating and valuing the things that you do have.
Absolutely.
Like people that are out there with physical freedom, but being mentally enslaved to something that's like one of the roots is money. Like the things people do for money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not overvaluing money and understanding that money is a resource. That's it. It's just a resource. Don't overvalue that. Because a lot of times we do things just to get money and we end up in here with a sentence that's like, damn, it wasn't even worth the money.
Yeah, overvalue money. I feel like we undervalue character and everything.
Yeah.
Like that too.
Yeah, definitely, man.
So I'm gonna get as many links as I can too for the Facebook, for all the pages too, and I'm gonna link it in the description on YouTube and everything too, so people could go directly to that. So
okay, I appreciate you, bro. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely appreciated this opportunity, bro. I'm building with you, and we definitely gonna connect more. I would love to work on maybe a music project in the future with you, bro.
Absolutely.
Come out for the people.
For sure. Absolutely. Anything I could do to add value, man. And I appreciate you calling in and everything too. So I guess before I let you go, if there was anything that you wanted to touch on, maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about. And if not, just some closing words for the people before I let you go, bro.
Yeah, love and respect. That's it. Love and respect, love and self.
That's
you know
it.
what I mean? And cherishing people, cherishing your relationships, your bonds, work on bond building, connecting with resources, uplifting your community and not destroying. Like, we got to get it together, man. You know what I mean? Because we all got potential. It's just finding your potential. What's your talent? What was the genius that you were born with?
Absolutely.
Everyone was born with a genius level talent. What's yours? And search yourself. Also, go to 16personalities.com and worry about yourself. I mean, learn about yourself. See what your personality, trait is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's your personality type? I mean, what are you into?
Yeah, and I think a big thing of that is to be open-minded, because you may never find your superpower if you're not open-minded and you stay closed-minded and think, oh, that's corny or that's that, or blah, blah, blah. So I think being open-minded is a big part of that.
Nah, that's a fact. Definitely. I wouldn't be here where I'm at now with this mental space if I wasn't open-minded. So that's definitely, you know, great words to use.
Absolutely. So, well, thanks again. Guys, thanks for tuning in. That's Dwight calling in from MCI Norfolk. I'm your host, B. Luke. And guys, this is the Bounce Back Podcast. And remember, it is what it is. What's next is what you make it. On that note, peace and love. We out of here. Thanks again, Dwight.
Peace. You know that.
Bounce back, ain't got a moment. When they see you down, just know they love it.